Welcome back, everyone. Ready to dive into something pretty interesting today.
Always. Lay it on me.
All right, so we're looking at this column, right? Breaking Barriers in the Legal Profession. Catchy title, huh?
Definitely grabs your attention. So what's the angle here?
Well, it's written by advocate Shivam Shukla. And let me tell you, he's got some bold ideas about shaking things up in the legal world.
Oh, like what? Spill the tea.
He's actually advocating for making top-tier legal services, wait for it, more affordable.
Whoa. Okay, that's definitely not what you usually hear when you think lawyer. That's pretty radical.
I know, right? Almost like he's trying to break the stereotype.
Well, stereotypes exist for a reason, right? I mean, didn't he go to law school? Those things are expensive.
He did. But that's what makes his argument so fascinating. He's not just some outsider ranting, He's using his own experience, his own career to make the case.
I see. So it's like he's walking the walk, not just talking the talk. I like it.
Exactly. He even uses real cases as examples, like this one with a delayed flat from Remprasai Realty.
Yeah, I've heard of those cases. They can drag on forever.
Exactly. And he approached it with this whole accessible excellence philosophy. I mean, think about it. We all want great service, but it's often so pricey.
Totally. Everyone wants the best, but can everyone actually afford it? No, not really.
And that's where I think advocate Shivam Shukla is onto something, right? Maybe the old model needs a shakeup.
So wait, are we saying lawyers should just start working for peanuts? I don't think my landlord would be too thrilled about that.
No, hold on. It's not about slashing prices to the bone. It's more nuanced than that. He's talking about finding a balance, offering top-notch service at a price that's more, well, realistic for people.
Okay, yeah, finding that sweet spot. Right, so it's not about undercutting everyone, just being more reasonable. Makes sense.
And there's more to it than just the price tag. Advocate Shivam Shukla is a big believer in the hustle, going above and beyond for clients. He even shares the story about a vehicle permit renewal in District Dioria.
Bureaucracy. That sounds like a pain. What happened?
It was supposed to be a simple thing, but the system was a nightmare. He ended up having to jump through all these hoops, navigate this crazy maze of regulations, just to get his client what they needed.
So it was more about the effort, the going the extra mile for the client than anything else.
Exactly. And honestly, I think that resonates with everyone, no matter what field you're in.
Yeah.
We've all had those simple tasks that turn into epic quests. But it's the dedication, the willingness to push through that really makes a difference.
True that. You remember the people who show up, not just the ones who clock in and out.
Right. And when you tie that back to the idea of making legal services more accessible, well, you're building trust, you're building loyalty.
Right. Because if you're already doing the absolute most for your clients and you're doing it for a price they can afford, that's huge.
Exactly. It's like a foundation for long-term success.
Yeah.
Now, I do have a question, though. Doesn't this whole affordable excellence thing risk making you look, well, cheap?
That's a good point. I mean, you don't want to undervalue your skills, right?
Yeah.
But it's all about how you frame it.
And this is where advocate Shivam Shukla emphasizes the importance of being a problem solver, not just a lawyer.
Okay, I can see that. It's about shifting the focus, not just quoting statutes, but actually understanding what the client needs and then finding the best solution.
Exactly. He talks about cutting through the legal jargon, being empathetic, truly listening to clients. He uses this case with a contractor battling public sector units as an example. Not a glamorous case, but really complex.
So less Perry Mason courtroom drama, more nitty-gritty behind-the-scenes work.
Yeah. Digging through audits, deciphering contracts, the stuff that doesn't make headlines but is crucial to getting results.
Makes you think, maybe we all need to step back sometimes and ask ourselves, are we really solving problems? Are we really meeting the needs of the people we serve? Or are we just, going through the motions?
That's a really good question, and honestly, it's something we could all probably reflect on.
It's like almost a wake-up call,
Yeah.
Back to basics.
Absolutely. And advocate Shivam Shukla, he really hits on that. He's all about building a solid foundation, not just in law, but in life too, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to get caught up in wanting the quick win, the easy success.
Right. But he's saying that real success is built on hard work, diverse experiences, and you know what? Learning from those inevitable failures.
You got to take a lumps to learn, right?
He uses this example, this case involving a police constable's post-death dues. It was messy, family relationships, legal entitlements, just a lot of layers.
Those can get complicated fast, especially when emotions are high.
Exactly. And advocate Shivam Shukla really had to think outside the box, push himself to find a solution.
So it was a real trial by fire kind of thing, forging skills through tough
I
challenges.
think that's a great way to put it. And it really connects back to this idea of always seeking out new knowledge, being adaptable. He's not just a lawyer. He talked about psychology, communication, even AI.
Well, hold on, AI? Like robots taking over the courtroom? Is that where we're headed?
Uh-huh, not quite. But it's more about using these new tools to be a better lawyer. Advocate Shivam Shukla sees AI as this powerful tool for research, for staying ahead of the curve.
So it's about being well-rounded. Not just knowing the law, but understanding people, being tech-savvy, the whole package.
And I think that ties back into his approach of making legal services more affordable. It's about creating opportunities, being proactive, not waiting for things to just happen.
It's a hustle mentality, right?
Exactly. And it takes guts, especially in a field that can be, well, pretty traditional. But here's the thing. How do you make legal services more accessible without looking, I don't know, cheap?
Yeah, it's tricky, right? You don't want to undermine your expertise or come across as like the discount lawyer.
And I think Advocate Shivam Shukla addresses this by focusing on value. Remember that case with the delayed flat Ramprasad Saar Realty?
Oh yeah, the one where he was all about affordable excellence.
Exactly. He wasn't just undercutting the competition. He took the time to understand the client's problem, came up with a solution that worked for them, and delivered high-quality results.
So it's not just about price, it's about proving your worth, showing that you're committed, that you care, and that you can deliver.
Exactly. And that's a powerful message, don't you think? It applies to so many fields. What do you think? Could this approach work in your world, like offering top-notch service, but at a price that's, well, more down to earth?
Honestly, I think it's brilliant. In any field where you're providing a service, you have to stand out, right? And being able to offer quality without the crazy price tag, that's a game changer.
Right. It makes you think about how we can all be more creative, more adaptable, even disrupt the status quo a bit. And speaking of shaking things up, Advocate Shivam Shukla had this really interesting take on tradition and innovation.
Oh yeah, he's all about honoring the past, but not being afraid to embrace the future, right?
Exactly. He uses this case as an example, something called illegal land encroachment in Meerut.
Oh yeah, I read about that. It was a public interest litigation, a PIL, right?
That's the one. So it was a big deal, right? Impacting a whole community.
Huge. And he had to get creative. He talks about using AI for research, social media for outreach, even tapping into psychology and communication strategy.
That sounds like he threw everything but the kitchen sink at it.
Well, sometimes you got to pull out all the stops, right? Especially when the stakes are so high.
And it worked.
It did. Advocate Shivam Shukla won the case.
See? Thinking outside the box. I love it.
Me too. It's inspiring, you know? He's basically saying, don't be afraid to try new things as long as you're staying true to your core values.
Yeah, that's a good point. You can innovate without losing your integrity. And that actually leads us to another important point he makes, this whole idea of a client-centered approach.
Oh yeah, he's big on that. It's not just about winning, it's about understanding your client, their needs, their fears, their hopes. You're an advocate, not just a legal machine.
So you got to see the human side of the law,
Yeah.
not just the case files and legal arguments.
Right. He gives this example. He was representing a contractor, and this guy was having all sorts of issues with public sector units, mountains of paperwork, complex audits, the whole 9 yards.
Sounds like a nightmare.
Oh, it was. But here's the thing. Advocate Shivam Shukla didn't just throw legal jargon at the guy and say, good luck. He took the time to break it all down, explain everything clearly, and make sure the client felt heard and understood.
So it's about building that trust, that connection, making sure the client knows you're in their corner fighting for them.
Exactly. And that's something we can all learn from, right? Whether you're a lawyer, a doctor, a teacher, whatever, it's about being human first, expert second.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And speaking of building trust, Advocate Shivam Shukla has some really insightful thoughts on how to establish a reputation for integrity and excellence in a field that, well, let's face it, doesn't always have the best reputation.
True that.
Right.
Lawyers, they don't always get the best press, do they? So how does he suggest you build that trust, that positive image?
Let's dig into that. This is where things get really interesting.
It all comes down to, like, walking the walk, you know?
Yeah.
Actions speak louder than words.
I hear you. So Advocate Shivam Shukla is saying it's not just about saying you're ethical, it's about actually being ethical, like showing it in everything you do.
Exactly. He even talks about this case, a really tough one, involving a minor girl. He represented the father before the high court. And, You can tell just reading his words how deeply it affected him.
Wow, that's heavy stuff.
Yeah.
Makes you realize the weight of responsibility lawyers carry, right?
Hmm.
They're not just playing a game, they're dealing with real lives.
Exactly. And I think that's why advocate Shivam Shukla is so adamant about this whole client-centered approach. It's about seeing the person behind the case file.
It's about remembering that everyone has a story.
And he even encourages young lawyers to broaden their horizons, not just focusing on legal stuff, but also exploring psychology, communication, even things like emotional intelligence.
So it's about being more than just a legal expert.
Right. It's about being a human being who happens to also be a really good lawyer.
It's a good distinction.
Yeah.
And, it makes me think maybe that's how you break into the legal market these days. It's so competitive, right?
Oh, totally. Everyone's vying for those top spots.
But if you can offer not just affordable services, but also this, deeper understanding, a more holistic approach, maybe that's your edge.
Yeah. It's like, hey, I'm not just going to fight for you in court. I'm going to be there with you every step of the way. I get it. This is tough.
It's about compassion, right?
Yeah.
And I think people crave that, especially when they're dealing with something as stressful as a legal issue.
For sure. You want someone who's not just going through the motions, but who actually cares.
And advocate Shivam Shukla, he gives some really practical tips on how to do this. He talks about clear communication, ditching the legal jargon, making sure clients understand what's happening.
So it's about empowering them, not just talking down to them.
Right. It's a partnership.
Yeah.
And I think when you approach it that way, well, everyone wins.
And that, I think, is really the heart of advocate Shivam Shukla's message. It's not just about winning cases or making money. It's about making a difference. It's about being a force for good in the world, even if it's just one client at a time.
That's powerful stuff. And it makes you wonder, could we all apply that to our own lives? How can we be more compassionate, more understanding, more dedicated to making a positive impact?
It's a challenge, for sure. But I think it's a challenge worth taking on.
I agree. Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into advocate Shivam Shukla's philosophy. It's been a fascinating journey, and honestly, I feel like I've learned a lot.
Me too. It's given me a lot to think about, that's for sure.
So, as we wrap up, what would you say are the key takeaways our listeners should remember?
I think advocate Shivam Shukla really challenges us to rethink what success means. It's not just about money or prestige. It's about integrity, service, and compassion. It's about using your skills to make a real difference in people's lives.
And it's about never stopping learning, always growing, and being willing to embrace new ideas and approaches. Advocate Shivam Shukla is a great example of how we can all push boundaries and challenge the status quo while staying true to our core values.
He's a true innovator, that's for sure.
Well said. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We encourage everyone listening to check out Advocate Shivam Shukla's column and see how his insights might spark new ideas for you, no matter what field you're in. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.